Imagine if a black child went to a school named after a man who called America a white man's country and was prepared to make sacrifices to preserve and ensure white supremacy. Well, that's the case when it comes to many schools named after these white supremacists. The folks at Education Week, two reporters focused on 8 states where this is happening. Andrew Ujifusa and Corey Mitchell, they join us right now. Hey, folks, how you doing?
Thank you for having me, Roland. I appreciate it.
Okay, so tell us about Russell Elementary School in Warner Robins, Georgia.
So this is a project we did where we looked for schools named for Southern politicians who signed what's called the Southern Manifesto in 1956. This document basically said that the Brown v. Board of Education decision about segregated schools was illegitimate, and they encouraged Southern states to resist the ruling by any lawful means. So this was a project we did that built on something we did last year where we looked at schools named after Confederate leaders. We found 22 schools across, as you said, 8 states named for politicians who signed that document in 1956. Probably the most famous was Strom Thurmond in South Carolina, who served in the Senate for close to 5 decades, along with Richard Russell, for whom Russell Elementary School is named, and others as well.
And look, I mean, these are absolute supremacists. These are people who are racist or bigoted. And to have our kids having to go to school with these folks, let's keep in mind, it was after the Brown versus Board of Education decision when many of these schools were named after these Confederate generals and these white supremacists.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that people have pointed out to me in the course of working on this story that, look, it's maybe inappropriate for black children, but also for white children, for any child to be attending schools named after people who held those views and who held a lot of power. I think some people feel that way, and you know, it's also possible that a lot of the children who go to these schools don't know who these men are. It's just a name on a building to them. So, you know, it's hard to tell on a community by community basis how well these men are known and what kind of controversy it might cause in the community if this person's record became better known.
So let's pull up this graphic here, folks. Here's a list of the schools with the highest concentration of African-American students that are named after politicians who signed the Southern Manifesto opposing school integration. You got McClellan Magnan High School, named for John L. McClellan, a U.S. Senator from Arkansas. 89% African-American. Wilbur D. Mills High School, named for Wilbur D. Mills, a congressman from Arkansas. 63% African-American. Strom Thurmond, as you said, that school in Johnson, South Carolina, 50% African-American. You also have Fulbright Elementary School, named for J.W. Fulbright, a U.S. Senator from Arkansas, 45% African-American. William Comer Middle School, named for the representative from Mississippi, Pascagoula, Mississippi, 44% African-American. And as we said, Russell Elementary School. And we can go all around the country and see examples of this. Andrew, last question. Is there a movement afoot to change the name of these schools?
I don't think there's a broad movement in the same way that we've seen people push against schools named for Confederates. There have been isolated cases where people have protested the names, and in a few cases in places like Virginia, the names have been changed. But I think these names are not as well known as names like Robert E. Lee, and so I don't think so far they've provoked the same kind of reaction in different communities.
All right, then. Andrew, great job with Education Week. Thank you for enlightening folks about this.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to go to our panel here. Cleo, I want to start with you. We always talk about, you know, the targeting of black people and the psyche of black people. And this is a continuation of white supremacy when we talk about these high schools that are named after folks like Robert E. Lee. Yeah. And for the folks who keep saying, oh, don't change them, that's our history. No, these were people who literally did not want black people going to school, who did not want us to actually get ahead in our society. To me, naming a school after somebody is an honor. These are absolutely racist individuals. In fact, the Russell building in Washington, D.C. where members of Congress's offices are, is named after that same Richard Russell.
And there's also honors like the Rhodes Scholar. You ever heard of Cecil Rhodes, who was a racist white supremacist? And Rhodes Scholars are considered highly developed academics. So the trauma of white supremacy and its normalization in the midst of our lives is a norm, and it does have a discerning impact on the self-concept of black people. And it implies that being a white person who's a racist is fine and being black is not fine. So I'm glad that people are attending to this, and I hope there's some progress made in terms of changing those names, particularly in black schools, because obviously there's these racist names in white schools as well, and J. Edgar Hoover's name is everywhere. Remember him? He made it hard for Malcolm, Martin, Medgar Evers, and Marcus Garvey.
Yeah. These stories, you know, we can figure out what we're going to do with renaming schools or any of things. You know, I'm kind of, and you know, yes, I'm concerned about it, but at the same time, I do acknowledge, as you said, you know, I live in a city where the Russell Senate office building is named after that same person. Across the river here, we have the Thomas Jefferson Memorial, who, as people like to romanticize, talk about the fact that he had a mistress named Sally Hemings. Yeah, right.
No, wait, hold up. What we not gonna do is use words like that. No, he had a slave who he slept with.
Yeah. Who had no choice.
That's somebody
who he raped.
How does it enslaved woman say no? I don't feel like it tonight.
One second. Everybody, 1 second. We're going to use proper language here. I'm not going to call somebody who was a slave a mistress.
I agree.
Thank you,
She
Roland.
had no choice but to sleep with him because she was property.
Yeah.
Now go ahead and finish your comment.
And that's why I said that people like to romanticize as she was his mistress. And we know that she was not his mistress. She was a slave. She didn't have a choice in any of that. But my whole point in saying this is that whether we're talking about Robert Byrd, who was the ex-Cyclops of the KKK, a longtime Democrat, you know, these things exist. You know, we have to figure out how to handle them in today's climate. But, you know, Robert Byrd was a member of the KKK, and there are plenty of things in West Virginia named after him. Should we handle it? Sure, we can handle it in whatever way we choose, but I think we should acknowledge that these things exist pretty much across the board.
Malik, this is not partisan at all. We have been in this country for 400 years, and our entire existence here has been repudiated every time we turn around. So naming these schools after these segregationists, having these streets, congressional buildings, all this named after segregationists, continuing to fly that Confederate flag is all about repudiating the African presence. So for you to sit up here and refuse and try to make jokes about romance, there has been no romance.
No, I didn't make a joke about romance. I'm telling you what people have said
Baby
about
boy,
it. I'm not making that.
No, you use the word romance. You use the word romance, which does not belong in any sentence that has anything to do.
He was saying that others have romanticized.
I need everybody to chill out. Thank you very much. All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, everybody out here in 2019 trying to get healthy and get well and get fit. And so people are trying all kinds of different diets and different things along those lines. Well, what about the D-Herbs Full Body Cleanse? They're one of the partners here for Roland Martin Unfiltered. As I told you, I did their 20-day D-Herbs Cleanse. Lost 18 pounds eating just raw vegetables and fruits and nuts, things along those lines. No fried foods, no processed foods, no red meat, no dairy, all that stuff you can't do by doing the cleanse. It is about providing you more energy, taking the toxic stuff out of your body, and actually being able to clean you out and to start you fresh and anew. If you want to try the D-Herbs Cleanse, we ask you to go to dherbs.com, and use the promo code ROLAND. You can also call 1-866-4-D-Herbs, 1-866-4-D-HERBS. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.